My Lords, the FCO has regular discussions with the World Service about its future. On the 1st of April, the World Service transfers from FCO grant in aid to licence fee funding. Future funding will be decided by the BBC Trust. DCMS is now in discussion with the BBC about additional external funding proposals. The Government remains fully committed to the global role and work of the World Service.
My Lords, I thank the Minister for her answer. Through the BBC World Service, many listeners have a faith in the UK's image, our influence and our beliefs. These qualities I don't think should be lost at any price. Many of your lordships are not only admirers of the BBC World Service but also concerned citizens, despite the warm words we hear from the Lord Patten and Lord Hall. When will the Government be producing the plans and figures with the BBC Trust for future funding for the following 3 years, i.e. before the end of the Charter? The BBC World Service have only 1 year's guarantee, £245 million, and that is within the BBC's budget, with no mechanism to protect the World Service. And can the Minister tell your Lordships whether she will continue to be responsible after April the 1st, as the Foreign Secretary will still approve the objectives?
The noble lady, my noble friend, asked an incredibly important question, and as she may be aware, we have about £238 million worth of funding allocated for this current financial year. The financial year starting in April of this year sees the BBC World Service licence fee funding go to £245 million, which is an increase on the current year's funding by about £6 million. Of course, thereafter it will be for the BBC to decide how it feels what it feels the appropriate level of funding will be. The Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport will continue to, of course, have the overall responsibility of remitting the licence fee money to the BBC under the new arrangements. And as the noble lady has said, the current charter runs until December 2016. The Government has yet to announce the scope, timing and process for the review of the charter. In terms of Foreign Office involvement in this matter, the Foreign Secretary will also continue to approve the opening and closing of the World Service language services, as he does at present, based on recommendations put to him by the World Service.
My Lords, since the S4C is also partially funded in recent years by the BBC, in the same way as the World Service is, what consideration has been given for the future funding of S4C?
Okay. I'm going to have to write to the noble lord on that one.
My lords, of course. My lords, I'm grateful. Did the noble Baroness the Minister see the comments in yesterday's edition of The Independent by Justice Michael Kirby, who chaired the recent Commission of Inquiry established by the United Nations to investigate human rights abuses in North Korea, where he said that the extension of BBC World Service transmissions to North Korea, quotes, a country that's largely been cut off from the rest of the world, would make a considerable difference in fighting against those abuses of human rights. And given our own Article 19 obligations and the BBC's historic role in promoting democratic values above the heads of dictators, isn't this a moment for the Government to urge the BBC World Service to play its part?
This is a question which, of course, the noble lord has asked me on a number of occasions. I've answered it here at the dispatch box, indeed written to him. And as he is aware, noble lords may be aware that in 2013 the World Service had a review of the possible options for a Korean language service, and it concluded after a fact-finding mission that at this moment in time the questions such as likely audience reach and cost and technical feasibility meant that it was not an option that they felt was appropriate at this stage. I am aware of the UN Commissioner's report, and the noble lord will be aware that that came back with two quite specific approaches as to how engagement could happen, one through the broadcasting route, but also one through encouraging people-to-people contact. We are one of the few embassies that does have extensive people-to-people contact because of our embassy in North Korea, and it was also recognised by the UN report that that is one of the ways in which we can engage dialogue.
Accept that the BBC World Service, together with the British Council, constitute the most effective expression of so-called soft power available to the United Kingdom, and indeed excels beyond any comparable services in the rest of the world. In light of that reality, would she not agree with me that there are no circumstances in this dangerous, confused, and in too many places oppressed world for a reduction in scope or in service of the BBC World Service? And if any reductions would take place, it would not just contradict the interests of our country, but diminish the efforts for freedom being made in so many other countries.
The Noble Lord makes an important point, and we have indeed been referred to as a soft power superpower because of the organisations and the work that we do. And indeed, my noble friend Lord Howell has been leading discussions on this with other colleagues. But I have to stress to him that the BBC World Service is, of course, operationally, editorially and managerially independent, and they have to make these decisions in accordance with those headings.
My friend...
Listening to her first reply and subsequent replies, you would say that the government is flying on a wing and a prayer as in this matter. Would she not recognise that it is high time that there was a structured solution for the future of the funding of the World Service within the BBC, and not just one that relies on a vague network of bureaucratic issue lines that she mentioned?
Well, the sense was really that long-term financial stability would come from licence fee funding as opposed to the way in which the BBC World Service has been funded in the past. And indeed, the BBC World Service is in contact with the DCMS to look at how alternative forms of funding could come on tap in due course.
My noble friend, the Minister, clearly agrees in the importance of a healthy and vibrant World Service. In February, Peter Horrocks, Director of the Service, told the Foreign Affairs Committee of ambitious plans to extend the service it offers. We're launching, he said, and creating many new digital and TV services, including a Burmese TV service. Does my noble friend not think that from a practical perspective, this very important long-term planning must be extremely hard for a corporation that doesn't know what its funding is going to be in 14 months? And how can the FCO help the Charter review process to ensure that the BBC World Service does not face a diminished future?
I think that if I can refer my noble friend to the way I answered the question before, this was a matter which was dealt with as part of the spending review in 2010, and it was felt that this licence fee funding footing which the BBC was placed upon was the appropriate way forward. The noble lady is right to refer to the opening of services, the Burmese, in the beginning of 2014, as there were services closed in years before that. These are managerial editorial decisions which the BBC have to take.